Hello, listeners. Now, if you know me at all, you know that it gives me such joy when I find authentic vintage clothing. And although I can find a lot of my pieces at charity shops and I'm always banging on about them, they don't always supply the true vintage that I really, really need, which makes sense as they're donation driven. So, where do I turn then? Well, I go to a passionate small team business that provide the vintage, the retro, and the much needed quality replicas. Revival Vintage, ran by Helen and Mark. For this episode, I've got a little surprise for you with a 10% discount off your entire order at Revival Vintage with my discount code Real Vintage Dolls House. Happy vintage shopping! We need to start by saying how great you both look. I feel like we're on the Met Gala. What are you wearing? Who are you wearing? Are they your own company's pieces or things you've
Yeah,
thrifted?
Yeah,
Oh,
I've got some of the menswear on. So I've got I think this is a brand new
Walt.
knit. So this is
No.
it used to be called Walter, but because we've changed the design a bit, it's going to be called Melvin now. That's just come out in the last week or so. And
I love it.
then I've got like a cotton short sleeve shirt.
They're all named after family members of the menswear. So
Oh,
Uncle Walter, Uncle Melvin.
I didn't know that. I didn't actually. I knew you were a family-run business, but I didn't know. Oh, that's so lovely. And what about you, Helen? What are you wearing?
This is a 1940s replica. It's a sample of something that's coming later in the year.
Well, I'm also wearing one of your dresses, as you've probably noticed. As I said to you offline before we just started, this is my favourite vintage dress by far for a lot of reasons. It's incredibly comfortable, but it gives me the most amazing shape. It looks like it shouldn't be comfortable because of the shape it gives me, but it is. And it never creases. It doesn't matter what I'm doing, how long I'm on the train for, it never creases. And I think this is from your socialite range. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I wanted to just get to know you because being a content creator, I communicate with a lot of vintage clothing companies, as you can imagine. But yours were one of my first, and yours have stood out. All the companies I've worked with are fab, but I really like yours because it feels very authentic. Even the design of your website, I really like, and how you talk about your staff ethos, which is really cool. Not many people do that. So I wanted to start first about you guys, then about the business. So, where did both of your interest in mid century vintage clothing begin?
For me, it would be listening to my mum talk about the beautiful clothes that my grandma used to make,
Oh,
getting ready for dances and talking about the full skirted dresses in the 60s and the pencil dresses. And then I went on to study fashion design in York. And
oh,
at the time, there was a bit of a 50s revival in the
yeah.
80s. And I used to love looking, on a student budget round markets and secondhand shops. And it just kind of grew from there. It was mainly from the fashion side of things that my interest grew in ways to look a bit quirky, a bit different with
Mm.
well made clothing, rather than being really into the music scene or something,
Mm.
some other way. So it
Mm.
was a fashion led thing for me.
well, I mean, it was in the 80s again. It was the
Mm.
50s revival in the 80s, and in a similar way, I used to look at pictures of my mum and dad who were sort of at the young age when they were in the 50s, and they looked. I always used to think how they looked like movie stars. It was really good
Mm.
when you saw the pictures and that. Um, and also at the time there was films out like Dirty Dancing,
Oh,
Back to the Future, even. They
yeah.
just looked quite cool. The younger people in that time.
Mm.
So a lot of the pop groups used to wear stuff like that. So maybe it was a bit more music led for myself.
Mm.
But then I sort of carried on then and didn't really have much interest in it really. It was probably in the background that I might have
Mm.
enjoyed looking at it, but when Helen and I met, she's coming up for 20 years now. That I got really back into that, and yeah, so in the last sort of 10 years, very much so, because when I joined the company about 10 years ago.
Mm.
So yeah, yeah, so that's how it's
You've
happened. So
revived
it
your
does.
love
It's
for
been
it.
revived. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I feel a bit ignorant, but I don't know much about the that fashion revival during the 80s. So there was a moment in the 80s where 50s kind of came back, did it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it
yeah.
did.
I
Yeah.
didn't know that. Was there any particular reason? Was it pop culture, do you think, and the films and the music? Just people started to adopt that more 50s-esque style again, but in the 80s?
I would think it would probably be that, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think. I mean, maybe it's. I think maybe through history, the generations, the generation of the children of that generation seem to bring it up. I think probably
Mm.
the kids of today probably like the 80s and 90s, perhaps.
They
I
do.
think there's something in that.
Yeah.
We definitely saw a 70s revival probably in the early 2000s. I think I
Mm.
remember wearing stuff, the vintage stuff that Ellen used to get as well. At that point.
Mm.
So I think it's. I don't think it was.
Unique.
Maybe that period was the first time that sort of
Mm.
thing happened. But yeah,
It
because I think
continues to
Mm.
happen, doesn't
yeah,
it?
that's
Mm.
right. Yeah,
Yeah, that's a topic I find really interesting and I talk about a lot. I know that in the 50s, I know that the Teddy Boys based their look off Edwardian street
yeah,
gangs. So maybe it's always been happening, but I think you're
yeah,
right. I think at the moment people are really enjoying 80s, 90s and 2000s style. And I think a lot of people are kind of bringing that back, like the low-rider jeans and the crop
Yeah.
tops and the really thin scarves that like you'd see Britney wear and Christina Aguilera. I think that's all come back for young people. It's interesting to me as to why these things come back. Even today, you've got things like Stranger Things, bringing the 80s back, and you've got things like Peaky Blinders bringing back the 30s. So you've got like even things like Downton Abbey, and you've got a lot of like things in mainstream media maybe that make people want to, maybe go online and find a vintage piece of their own.
the Pinky Blinders. That was a real explosion. I think
Yeah.
that's really what's taken fashion by storm in the recent past. Definitely, lads of all ages and all backgrounds. They wanted to look like that, and even now you're looking at suits. People want to wear suits more. You wouldn't look out of place if you went out in a suit now, would you?
Mhm.
But maybe 10 years ago, you might not have been the case.
Yeah, it's really amazing how influential those things are. It's not abnormal to go for a night out in Edinburgh or Manchester and see guys in a proper suit now, whereas
Yeah,
before that would probably not happen quite as much. And weddings as well, I think that theme has gone through to like weddings. People want like a pocket watch now and a waistcoat, and but that and also the haircut and of course the peak cap. It's all
yeah.
kind of, it's about that. The Peaky Blinders trend is that became that was an explosion. That is a very good way to describe it. And do you both wear vintage all the time? And you can be on. I don't, so you could be completely honest. But do you tend to wear vintage all the time, or do you sometimes slip into a more modern aesthetic for comfort or practicality? Or
Yeah, exactly that, really, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah, I think we don't. We like we love we really love it. Actually, we love looking at it,
mm,
and if we maybe get a picture from customers and that, we just love looking at it. And
mm,
we do like to dress up when the needs when we're going out somewhere to
yeah,
especially a vintage fair. We wouldn't go without wearing some vintage. But
definitely.
generally, not in everyday life. I think we love
We love
we
clothes,
like
don't
clothes
we?
in
So
general. So
Mm.
to pigeonhole us into certain eras, we wouldn't ever do that. I don't think.
I think I'd get a bit bored. I like to mix and match different eras and just
So,
enjoy looking at clothes, even on a high street. I
mm.
just enjoy clothes and fashion.
It's an expression, isn't it? And I'm the
Mm.
same. Like on TikTok, I was kind of coined as the 40s girl, which wasn't really ever like the aim, but like I suppose because I live in a 40s
Yeah,
inspired house, I wear vintage and I talk about the 40s a lot. Obviously that became my sort of niche. But everything to do with my house and to do with the clothes I wear is so eclectic
mm.
because I love expressing myself. Fashion can be art, and I love
Yeah,
wearing any kind of, like, I found a dress the other day from a charity shop that's not vintage at all. It's like vintage inspired, but it's not. You couldn't say, oh, that's definitely from the era of the 40s or the 60s.
mm.
It's definitely made today, but it's got like a nod to the style and pattern and cut of a different era. I agree with you. I don't think there's any point being. I'm gonna have to get this cat hair off my microphone. Please excuse me. It's been driving me mad.
It's not
There
a
we go.
pigeon then, it's a cat.
No, I let the pigeons out yesterday, actually.
All
They had a
right.
good old fly. We've just rescued an ex-racing pigeon who was abandoned because he lost his race.
Oh,
It's very sad. It's very, very cutthroat industry, racing pigeons.
oh
And
dear.
I've just recently trained him to home. So that was a little moment of celebration for me.
Yeah,
Ah,
But
very
yeah,
good.
you really started something there, didn't you?
I know, crazy, all because of that little pigeon that sat on my lap at a pub. Never thought that was
Yeah.
going to happen. That was weird.
Yeah.
So let's get on to the clothing side, as in your clothing company. So we know what kind of got you into the revival scene. We know how you revived your love of it at this point in your life, and about your vintage tastes in your everyday life. Let's talk about your business. What actually made you start a clothing company? What was the light bulb moment where you thought, that's what we need to do?
I obviously I studied fashion design in York. I've
Mm,
already
mm.
mentioned that, and then I ended up kind of getting into corporate world. I was in HR and training, which was,
Ah,
really good grounding. And then I moved to Huddersfield with my partner at the time, and I noticed that there wasn't a vintage offering there. I
mm.
think there used to be, but when I moved, there wasn't, and I hit 40 actually, and I just thought now or never. I just really wanted to work for myself.
Ah,
And so I gave up my job and started with a modest stall on the market in Huddersfield, the indoor market. And it just grew from there. And I think if
wow.
you're naturally a creative person, you yearn to get back to those skills. Yeah, that's where it started. And we've grown. That was 20 years ago in 2003.
I relate to that so much. I actually can't believe how much I relate to that because I work in the NHS, and like you said, love it. It teaches me a lot. It
Mm.
keeps me grounded. I never have had the experiences I'd have had if I hadn't worked in this particular job. But I am a creative, and every day I am thinking I would really love to I'd not get back to that because I do it, obviously, as you know, I do it, around my job, but I'd love to do it all the time. And I'd love for that to be my business. And I think that's very brave of you to
Mm.
just kind of quit your job and leave the corporate world. Did you have, was there any sort of money on the table when you did that, or was it quite a risk to just kind of just
It
quit?
was it was a risk. I had nothing really to start with,
Wow.
and which is why I started small. And
Mm,
over the 20 years, we've grown every single year apart from COVID. We've
yeah.
grown as a business,
Yeah.
but we've done it. We've done it in a sensible way. Really, we've never had big loans and things. We've just kind of organically grown that way.
Wow.
So, all the experience I'd had from the big companies I work for, they did give me a really good grounding, and none of that's ever wasted. And I would say the same to yourself.
Oh.
It's not wasted, and and then you can tap into it. If you ever did do the role full time like I have,
Oh.
it does give you a really good grounding, and I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I didn't
Mm.
just go straight into this.
That's
I'm glad
amazing.
she did it as well because I was the same really. I've had two careers. I've had RAF career for 15 years, and then I did computer programming for 12 years.
Wow.
And yeah, and seeing Helene doing what she was doing, I thought, yeah,
Mm,
it's good, it's great that. So and that's why I joined at probably
mm.
about 10 years ago, I think it was now.
And what was it about your normal jobs versus now that they just weren't giving you? Like, obviously, you both are living a life now that is much more tailored to who you are as people.
Mm.
But what is it about the old way of living versus just going, right, I'm going to dive in the deep end and start my own business? What's great about that compared to where you were?
Well, I think for me as well, I just felt that I gave, absolutely everything to the roles I was in the workplace. And I just used to think, I mean, I was appreciated and I did
Mm.
well and promotions and things, but I just thought if I can do that for someone else, I can do it for myself. And
Mm.
I mean, a bit naive because it takes a lot more than that. But I just thought, yeah, and just some of the benefits, that just the freedom and being able to be in control of decisions and things like that. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, the lights come in really bad, so like we're.
Shall we put that?
Just
Stop and put the blind down.
you started to get more illuminescent while you were telling me about
Yeah, it was
like
like an
starting your
angel.
own business, and it was like a little epiphany for me. It was like I was watching, I was like, oh my gosh, the light has come through. This is what I need to do.
I mean, when I was in the Air Force, that wasn't. I basically didn't work hard enough at schools, and I went to, but I always wanted to go in the Air Force, but I didn't get the job that I wanted. So I did another job in catering, and then when I was doing it, there wasn't a lot of promotion there. So I thought I need to get on here. So I did a computer course, and then that's when I got the computer programming course, and then I did all that, and I got a job, and I did all right actually. I got to become an assistant manager in the programming office. But I realised when I used to go to meetings, I used to go to marketing meetings occasionally, and I'd also obviously go to programming meetings. And in the marketing meetings, I'd have more to say than when I was in the programming meetings. And then I realised that I'm in a way that I would never think I was creative, but I feel like I am actually a little bit more creative than I thought I was. So that's when I came into Revival. Really, I thought there's a chance here with both of us together that we can really make this business soar, really. And
Our
and I
skills
think
complement each other, don't
they
they?
definitely do, yeah. And so now it's just a case of just getting the satisfaction for working for yourselves, and also get. We've created a company that's giving other people jobs as well. Like there's going to be 8 of us soon, so it's like doing all that to to give other people work as well. So there's that satisfaction as well.
I don't know if we're on a podcast or I'm watching a webinar on how to start my own business, because this is great. Honestly, this is so. I didn't think I'd take like that side. I mean, I know that there was going to be so much value I'd take from chatting to you about like vintage, but for that side of things, I cannot explain to you how much that relates to me and my partner. Weirdly, we're in a very odd in between moment of our life, very scary in between moment where we could take the plunge, but there's nothing really waiting for us, and you have to just take that risk. And I just think more power to both of you for doing that. It's right where I'm at in my life right now, so that's invaluable to me.
Well,
I can't even tell you.
Talk to us anytime. We'd be happy to
Thank
help
you.
where we could.
That's amazing. I'm going to assume that you are my auntie and uncle. You've adopted me and you'll be there if I need you. Oh, thank you though, because honestly, my partner will be so interested in this podcast, just that side of things as well. Because we're sort of probably where you were, you know what I mean? Like, before you took the plunge, which is amazing. And regarding Revival, so obviously you are growing. I hear you're going to have 8 staff members now. I read on your website that you only have 6, so you're growing because you've got 2 more people to join, which is amazing.
Yeah.
What demographic do you find you sell to the most?
It's difficult to say now, but certainly when we started in our particular niche, which is probably 6 years ago now, since we really started going into focusing in on the mid-century, because before it was like anything from 40s to late 70s, maybe into 80s, but now it's just literally 40s and 50s. We felt that at the time, because what it was the 40s nostalgic events, that's where we came to realize that was where we should put our focus on. So, and those were our age group. So it was, so now and then it was like 30 plus. So maybe people they've had the children, they maybe paid off most of the mortgage or even paid it. So they've got a bit of extra cash to spend on, they want to do things at weekends, and they've got something to spend the money on. And so that was what that was. And it's still definitely probably a good proportion of that is that demographic. But also, because we were talking earlier about the Peaky Blinders, I think that's created a want for that type of fashion. And I think people have sort of, the younger age group, perhaps they're wanting that classic styles now. They're wanting to look different without having to go to fast fashion. So they're looking for that type of thing, just to book the trend really, and to be something different. So that's I think it's all ages really. I think that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the 40s events. When I see the families there, I can see how fun it must be for them all as a family to like think, oh, we can dress up and we can go have a nice 40s, weekend. What are some of your annual hot spots? Are there any 40s events, 50s events that you like to go and set up shop at, or you just like to go and enjoy yourselves at? Maybe I'll see you there.
I mean, sadly, one or two of our favourites aren't running any longer. We used to like
Oh,
Pickering and the York Festival of Vintage, and then this year Woodall Spa, which was another favourite, that stopped. We don't do many as a trader because we're just so embroiled in the other side of
yeah,
the business already. But we
yeah,
do like to go occasionally because I think it keeps us in touch with our customers, and we like to have
good.
the conversations out in the field, as it were, to find out what they're enjoying and
Mm,
about our clothing or what they'd like to see more of.
mm.
So we do try and do the odd one. We're trying one this year at Kelham Hall near Newark in April. So perhaps that will become a new favourite.
I didn't know Pickering had stopped because that's the one that I was always advised to go on online, and I kept saying I would go, and then obviously life just it's a shame that it's not happening anymore because I never got a chance to experience it, and everybody always used to
Yeah.
recommend that one, which is a
Yeah,
shame.
it
I
was a
think
very
that,
good
yeah,
one.
I think they still do
Ah,
bits and pieces in Pickering, but not as it used to be on such a big scale.
Mm.
oh,
And
well, I'll
and
definitely try
also
and check
the
that one.
Goodwood Revival's like the biggest one
Oh
to go
yeah,
to. I mean, that's really good.
I
It's,
love
It's
yeah,
Goodwood.
huge, isn't it?
yeah, it's really
Yeah.
good. I think we've been 3 times, so we usually
Ah,
go every 2 or 3 years,
yeah.
because it's a long way to
Because
go.
it's a busy
Yeah.
time for us at that point. It's difficult
Oh,
to then, up sticks and go down there when it's,
yeah.
sort of leaving the team behind to deal with all the busy period.
Goodwood is massive.
I
I went
know.
for the first time last year with my partner, and it was almost overwhelmingly big. I
Yeah.
was like, I need at least 4 days to get round this thing. This is just
Yeah.
insanely big. But it was good because around every corner there was something new. It's just a shame that you just physically can't cover enough ground, particularly if you're wearing a pair of 1940s heels. Even harder to cover that much ground. I should have
Yeah.
bought walking boots and then just kept switching my shoes.
Yeah.
I'll know
It's
for next time.
a long way back to the car.
Yeah, it is. And Mark, you mentioned fast fashion, which is a topic I'm quite interested in. I'm by no means an expert on it. I'm just interested in the nature of fast fashion. A lot of Chinese companies producing clothing that is just next to nothing in price, and can just be shipped off at the drop of a hat. How does the world of fast fashion affect a family run business like your own? Does it harm you in any way or
I don't think it harms us. In fact,
mm,
anything, if it probably it helps us because people are looking for something that's not fast fashion.
mm,
I think China gets quite a lot of bad press with that type of thing, but obviously the fast fashion it's dirt cheap,
mm.
and it's just yeah, it's affordable just to wear once and throw away, but
Yeah.
because of the nature of it, it's made cheaply, so it's only probably worth wearing once, and then it's gone. I think no, it doesn't affect us. I don't think. If anything, it would help us. What we
Persuade.
what we what
Yeah.
we have made is we don't consider it to be fast fashion. Of course, it's more slow fashion because it's quality
Yeah.
made, and it would never go out of style. It would just never go out of
It's
style because it's a classic cut
does
and
yeah
shape and
doesn't follow
design.
That's
trends, modern
Yeah,
trends.
that's one
Yeah,
of the things I loved about your company in particular because on your website, um, when I went on it once, I read a segment and you really drove home the point of slow fashion and fashion for all seasons, and that the quality means you will wear it and wear it again and wear it again, and it is timeless. And I prefer fashion of that nature, and that's why I prefer to support people like yourselves because that's a really important thing to tap into. Quality pieces that you buy once, and that you wear any season for years and years and years. So there's less clothing in circulation. It's better for the customer experience. It's better for the environment, and it's a more personal shopping experience for the consumer, I think. And that's what I really loved about your company in particular, because you drive home about, slow fashion and your ethos quite a lot, which I quite liked.
Yeah, I think
It's
also
important to us.
the price point as well. With it's a considered price point. Unless you've got loads of money in the bank, you're going to consider buying one of our pieces. Where there's a fast fashion, if it's £10, £20, you're just going to think, oh yeah, I'll have that.
I'll do
But
that, yeah.
we sort of price us our clothing at the range where you've got to think about buying it, but at the same time, it's not ridiculous amount of money that you've got to really save hard to get. So that's what we try and do.
Yeah.
That's what we tried to do from the start, really.
I think that's a very good thing to do, because the thing is, these days, everything is so quick and so like on a plate for people that not much is considered anymore. And actually, as a consumer, we should be made to consider something before we buy it. But with Amazon and Amazon Prime and fast fashion and everything being able to be next day delivery, we don't think about things very considered. And I don't see that it's any better buying loads and loads of different pieces from the fast fashion world that you wear once and chuck away, versus buying one dress or one suit that you wear for years to come. You've probably ended up spending the same amount of money anyway. But because we're never challenged about our consumerism, we forget what we've already spent. We just forget about it.
Yeah.
We buy, throw away. See a dress on a website that actually is authentic and will last for years and go, oh no, that's too expensive.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, you've just
Yeah.
spent on 3 different dresses over the last 5 months. So actually, you could have just bought the one. And I don't think consumers are challenged to be considerate. Actually, I think other outlets thrive on the fact that we don't consider it. They thrive on the fact that we're just going to press buy because we see the price, we see the postage, and we go, oh yeah, go for it. And that is a shame. I mean, I could go on with this. It's the same with like
me
food.
too.
It's the same with fast food. You could, you know what I mean? It's, they pride, that's where they get their power. The fact that we're going to thoughtlessly keep consuming. Social media, it's everywhere actually. That idea of the kind of thoughtless consumer, where as long as we just keep consuming and we don't really think about it, those businesses are going to keep thriving. And I find that a very interesting topic. So I think it's a very positive thing to consider something before you buy it. But again, with prices that aren't, beyond the realms of possibility anyway, I think that's the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
I have to think.
We're all about value, focusing on value, aren't we? In not just the product itself, but the whole experience. Customer service, aftercare, and so on.
Oh, that doesn't happen anymore. I mean, high streets are dying, let alone, you know what I mean? Like high street, I mean, they're not dying. I love going out and actually shopping, but it's becoming less popular than it once was. And so the customer experience and the shopping experience, it's not really, prioritized as much anymore.
I've lost count of the amount of times people that have maybe complained or something like that, or they've had a question to ask and they can't get over our customer service because we do really take it personal. Like we always try and put them us in their shoes type of thing, so sometimes it can be our detriment really, but if we can, if that customer wants to come back to us, that's what we need to do really, is to get the customers coming back.
You want to instill loyalty, don't you?
Yeah.
You want to build, it's a two-way streak. And I think the biggest comment I always see when I see reviews on websites is, couldn't speak to an actual human. That's the biggest thing. Everything's automated now.
Yeah.
The wonders of technology, but actually, is that doing us any favors? Is that doing the customer any favors? Probably not. I know where I would rather shop.
Yeah.
I'd rather shop with somewhere that has a face to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you guys, and knowing that whether it's in 2 business days or the same day, I'm going to get an answer regarding my query. It's just, it's a shame that doesn't happen as much. So talk to me a little bit about back to the webinar about business. What are the challenges of running your own business? What are some of the things that, with the peaks and troughs of life, with COVID and fashion changes and whatever, what are some of the challenges you've faced as business owners in the vintage realm?
Right. Yeah, I mean, gosh, many challenges along the way.
I mean,
but the learning
one of the
opportunities
main
are
ones recently was Brexit, when they actually pulled the plug, and we were selling to Europe, and people were coming to buy
Oh,
from us, and it was like before Brexit, it was like if
free
somebody
trade.
in France would buy something from London or Huddersfield or wherever,
yeah.
and it would just be like somebody buying something in Wales, from
Oh,
Huddersfield. But
yeah.
but now it's the taxes come on. So when it first came, people were buying stuff in Europe, and then they were getting a big tax bill when it got to the other side before they could have it, and they would
Oh.
take their frustration out on us. So there's a lot of red tape in all that. So
Mm,
I think we're all right with it now, but it's still a barrier
Settled.
to selling
Mm.
to Europe
mm.
now, whereas before
Oh.
it wasn't an issue. Another is perhaps getting recruitment can be quite difficult.
Mm, mm.
Getting the right fit for your
Yeah,
existing team, and you
Yes.
wouldn't think that would be so difficult, but it can be a challenge.
Mm.
Perhaps it's where we're based as well. I don't know.
yeah,
Oh,
But
yeah.
having said that, we've, even if it's through a small pool, of
Mm-hmm.
choice, we've always ended up with some cracking staff. So
yeah,
we're not grumbling, but it's harder than we would have thought. And sometimes, it's just people getting what we do. So we
Oh.
obviously we have this niche of 40s, 50s, whereas vintage clothing to other people can mean something so different. So some of the
Mm.
companies that we're dealing with, whether it be for digital marketing or, web support, whatever, they think they know what you're about straight away. Oh, I've got it, and then they're just completely wrong. That they're thinking
Mm.
band t-shirts, denim, and things, and then we're like, oh, we're not that kind of vintage.
Oh.
It just means so.
I was gonna ask why. What do they? And I'm like, oh, that.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's weird when you type in like vintage aesthetic or vintage on Pinterest or Google or whatever. Yeah. It's there's a
means so many
certain
things.
it does mean so many things,
Yeah,
and I think social media has a lot to do with that.
yeah,
I think people hear the word vintage, and if you're not actually vintage, if you're not in the world of vintage and you hear the word vintage and you're an outsider just trying to make sense of it, that's where your head goes to.
yeah.
Polaroid cameras, baggy t-shirts with band names on, ripped jeans. Yeah, I think that's what people think, and it's like, oh no, because there was loads of eras before
Mm.
that actually.
yeah,
They get a bit confused with true vintage and reproduction vintage as well,
Do they?
vintage
Do they?
style and so on. So that can be a little bit of a day-to-day challenge, really. Customers who visit the website, how do we know whether it's real or not? And it couldn't be more clearer, really, you feel.
Yeah.
But
That's a problem. They're so surface level. People are so surface level. Sorry, what were you going to say?
just I think whatever business you're in, there's always going to be little challenges along the way,
Mm,
but we see them as learning opportunities, don't we? And
yeah.
we've always got through. There's been times when we're tearing our hair out, but we find a way through. And there's usually a silver lining to any kind of negative element.
So going from the negative, let's go for the positive. What are some of your proudest business moments that Revival has experienced?
Oh, again, many really. When you first start a business, it's the little things, isn't it?
Oh,
Getting,
yeah.
100 more likes on your social media, whatever. And then
Hmm.
as we've grown, I think things that stand out perhaps would be when we were first involved with the Goodwood Revival that we've already mentioned in their
Yeah.
fashion show. So they selected
Wow.
some of our pieces, and I remember going along. What we watched it, we went along that first year, and it's like seeing your children up there.
Oh,
It's just
yeah.
you want to.
Yeah.
I'm very easily emotional anyway, but I can remember, tears in my eyes watching our stuff coming out, um, and then. And then, as I suppose, over time we've seen our products in TV and film. I think the
Mm.
first thing, that the main one, was we were on Strictly Come Dancing. There was about five 1940s original dresses on there. And then,
Wow.
as the years have gone on, different TV shows, from that right through to your sort of awards winning Hollywood sort of blockbusters like Oppenheimer springs to mind.
Oh, wow.
And
Mm.
then our most recent thing is we're featured on the one of our dresses is featured on the album cover of the latest Libertines album. So that's something exciting as
That's
well. So
amazing.
all kind of proud moments, but
Mm.
sort of putting that aside, I have to say that equal to that would be just getting a photograph from a customer where they've perhaps worn our socialite. They're absolutely beaming. There was a couple last year that got married, both of them in our outfits. And
Oh,
that, you just feel equally as proud of that, really,
yeah.
don't you?
Yeah, that's why we started the. We've got the Rafter Awards. I don't know if you're aware of that.
I've seen, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Love
yeah.
that. Love it. Tell listeners about the Rafter Awards.
The Rafter Award, and that's. Can you tell them what the?
Yeah, it's Revival Award for terrific attire.
Yeah. So each month we look through Instagram, because I think it's just on Instagram, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we look at we just look for pictures that people have tagged us in on, and then the best one that we find, we reward them with a little certificate and a little gift voucher. I think it's £10. At the end of the year, we pick the one for the whole year. You know, that out of the winners for the month, the whole year gets
100.
£100 gift
Wow.
voucher and
Oh.
like a
A
little
medal.
medal. Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely love that. I have a story to tell you guys actually. This is a true story. So when you sent me this dress to review and I did the review of me trying it on, and the reaction was genuine. I was shooketh at how
Oh.
good. I mean, I'm not big-headed, but I was like, "Oh my God, it looks so good on me." And like my reaction and whatever, my partner when he was being a little stalker when we were first dating, he said he knew he was in love with me when he watched that video. I hope he doesn't mind me saying that. Yeah, I hope he doesn't mind. But yeah, he said to me, when I saw that video of you in that beautiful 40s dress
Oh.
and you had your hair done, your lipstick on, and you were so amazed at how like pretty it looked, he was like, I knew then that I loved you. And
Oh.
Oh,
I was
brilliant.
like,
Yeah.
and he'll say that to this day, and that is why I will never ever part with this dress, let alone I absolutely love it. I've worn this to Black Country Living Music. I've worn this everywhere. This dress has been everywhere with me. And on that note, what helps you as a business regarding promotion? So one thing I'm interested in is how do media companies who are making dramas or films, how do they find you? Is there just a researcher out there that gives it a Google and you pop up? And how do you promote yourself? What is helpful from content creators or anybody? How can we help promote you more?
The film, the people in the theaters and the movies and that. Yeah, it's just
Purely by
literally. I think
accident.
it's Googling. But I mean,
Wow.
we have done some marketing. We've got a digital marketing company we partner with, and they did a separate campaign. So they do their magic, and we don't really know much about that. But
But it's
it
minimal,
yeah,
isn't it? It's
did help us. And I'm assuming that there's networking there. You know, obviously that one wardrobe department will speak to a member in another wardrobe
Yeah.
department. You know, where did
Yeah.
you get that from? So yeah, and I think once they find us, I feel that
because of the
they'll because
service.
of the service level. I think that because we've had phone calls from people from All Creatures Great and Small, the recent
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
we've
Yeah.
been on the phone with those and made sure we got the right thing for them and
And got
things
it
like
out the
that.
next day,
So
and
yeah, anything that helps their life easier, obviously they're going to come back to us, aren't they? So that's
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
they just know now we're so reliable and on it. We're on the
Yeah.
wavelength. And
Yeah.
but that's grown, and it's quite exciting. But to be honest, most of the time we don't actually. They use kind of code names, and so you might see a studio address, but a lot of it's guesswork, and then it's not until we actually spot, or one of the staff will kind of you're just watching something and you just spot and you're like, I'm sure that's one of our shirts, and so on. So it's just
Wow.
lovely, really, isn't it? We
Yeah.
do all the obvious stuff, the socials, and it's
Yeah.
relentless. It really is. And then we do use some more experienced help on things like Google Ads and stuff like that.
I think there's our
Imagery is
customers do. I
important.
mean, like now with the Instagram, especially, people wearing our things and tagging us in and putting our name on there. That really does help.
It's probably the
It's
best.
difficult to put you couldn't really put a monetary value onto it, or a. It's difficult to track all that kind of thing, really.
You do your best, don't you? Like we do newsletters, and then we can look at click rates and so on. But it
Oh,
really
yeah,
is a full-time job in itself, isn't it? All that side, really.
Yeah, it's no good. The thing with social media, that you do have to put a lot of work into it. You can't just take a photograph one day and then just put it on and that's the end of it. There's a lot of
not
work. I mean, you'll know
anymore.
yourself how
Yeah.
much work you've got to put
Yeah.
behind the scenes before you get like
Yeah.
a little clip of a video. Or videos are even worse than photographs, of course.
It's also time consuming. So, people will say, oh, why don't we love the videos of the staff and, and everything when you're all doing stuff together? But that's like a couple of hour downtime out of the normal work. And we're all like, hanging around and getting change, pressing the stuff. It's not an easy side of the business, I have to say.
And that's the issue with social media, when people are like, oh, do a video like that
Yeah.
again. We really enjoyed that. Do that again. And it's like, oh, that's lovely. But what people forget is that social media, you never see the behind the scenes footage. You never see the bloopers. You never see the work. You never seen the dress pressing and getting everybody to stand where they need to stand and say what they need to say and getting the walk. And, oh, a truck went by. We have to do that again. They don't understand it because all they're presented with is the perfect finished product. So because that looks effortless, they think, oh, it must have been effortless to do. But that's just so not the way. And like you say, you've got an actual, because you have an actual shop, don't you?
Yes.
So you've got to run that every day. So having all your stuff cart out to the back garden to do a video is not really ideal if someone's waiting to buy a shirt.
That's it. We're all taken away from our other part of our jobs, But you mentioned the shop there. Exciting news, actually. We're going to be moving to a new sort of showroom, aren't we, and premises, which is far more characterful than where we are. So we're excited about that.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, I'm sure you can't say where yet, maybe, but do you know when? Or can you say when?
Down the road in Huddersfield, where we're based now in Lockwood, and it's just down the road. We've outgrown where we are. It's we're bursting at the seams, so we've found somewhere. But it's when we gave our shops up in the town centre, we sort of wanted the opposite of that, and we went to a small industrial unit, and then we knocked through and we got 2 industrial unit. But and it's really served its purpose well. But I think we just want now to go somewhere that's more us and more characterful. So
it fits the brand more, because it's just a box at the moment, whereas this is an older building that's.
I mean, we have it beautiful down there. The girls do the best, but you are limited in how you can present it. So
these days, that people when they do go somewhere in person, like we talked about, that idea of the customer experience in the high street isn't as popular as it used to be. But when people do go to the high street and they've put that effort in, they are expecting a bougie experience, aren't they? Whether they go to a coffee bar or whether you go to a clothing shop, they want to be able to go into that world the minute they walk through the door. So I think that sounds no pun intended, that sounds more tailored to your vibe. You're going to have an opening, do you think?
We might do, we might do.
Yeah. And another thing I wanted to ask you is just about vintage fashion in general. I mean, you said something funny, Helen. You said about being emotional. I don't meet many people who aren't a bit emotionally, and very nostalgic, and they can like attribute meaning to a lot of things, and things really mean a lot to them. I'm not saying that people who aren't into vintage aren't like that, but I do find the vintage community. Because it's everything's like pre-loved or designed from things that have already been. We have this weird sense of like nostalgia, don't
Yeah.
we? And a real
Yeah.
care for things, and we will put more time and effort into something like me getting my 1940s cooker to work again.
Yeah.
It would have been so much easier to just go and buy a flipping cooker, but I got her working, and I named her. Her name's Glenda. And my boyfriend, he's got his car. She's a 1980s Beamer because he very much loves the 80s. Some days she doesn't start if it's too cold, but he'll never get rid of her. He'd rather put more work into
Mm.
her, her,
Mm.
because he's attached to her in a
Yeah.
weird way.
Yeah.
Do you think vintage people are a bit more sentimental in that way? And if so, why? Do you think there's a reason, or?
I don't know, but we've been to just carrying on from what you're saying there. We've obviously we go places to buy vintage, and sometimes we get into bigger places to look at. And I remember us going once to a wardrobe department from like a local amateur dramatics society,
Ah.
and the stuff in there was amazing. But I got really, really angry because I went into this room where all the men's stuff were, and they'd got suits from the 30s, like lovely tweed suits, jackets, boating jackets, you name it. They've
Prime
got
stuff,
really
beautiful
prime stuff,
stuff.
lovely hats, and all around it and on the hanging, and that was literally hundreds of them little yellow strips
To catch moths.
to catch moths. And so the clothes, they were absolutely ruined. They were just full of moth holes.
Oh
So, and it
no.
just
We
got us
couldn't
really
take
angry
any
because
of it. Yeah, they were just
so they were
such a
spoiled, really. They
waste.
were just they'd
Yeah.
had it, so
Instead of
Oh, it'd
dealing
break
with
my
the
heart,
problem.
that would.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it broke
Yeah.
our hearts really because
Mm.
we had to leave it because it
Yeah.
was just too bad. There was more holes than garment, wasn't there?
yeah,
And they're pieces of
yeah.
history,
That's
aren't
Yeah.
right.
they? Like, I know people are like, "Oh, you're just too sentimental for your own good," but it's not just that. These are pieces of history,
Yeah.
and like, I know a lot of people. We're in a bit of a throwaway nation nowadays, where it's just like, no, on to the next thing. Oh, you bought an iPhone last year. Oh, it's outdated
Yeah.
now, and it's like, what, already? And I think it's valuable to have people who like to keep the past alive, because we have to know what has been so that we can be advised on how we handle the world now. You know what I mean? Like one of my podcast guests said, to know where you're going, you've got to know where you've
Yeah.
been. And I think that is the same for history. And I spoke to a historian, and he said, if you don't know about history, you're liable to repeat it. And I think my heart would have broken right there with you. It's like when I go to an antique shop and I see like a Victorian fireplace, like the mantle,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's beautiful, but it's rusted and pretty much crumbling, and you just think,
Yeah. Or painting.
that must be hundreds of years old. Or that fireplace, right? My mum spent hours taking all of the white paint off
Oh,
of that to get it
yeah.
back to the cast iron. Why? Because I don't
To
know.
reveal its
Some people might
beauty.
not get
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I just wanted it to be back to its original beauty, which brings me on to one of my last questions. Why is it important to keep vintage fashion alive in 2024?
I mean, we can look at it's a living history, like you said, and we can look at photographs and we can look at videos of times gone by. But to see somebody actually wearing the items, that's
Bringing it to
a
life,
history,
isn't it?
living
Yeah.
history, and that's why it's such a shame that the 1940s events in like Pickering and Woodall Spa, they've gone, and it's all because of money, really, for different reasons.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
just because people think, oh, I'm not paying for that. It just becomes too health and safety. You have
Yeah.
costs and security and all that kind. So that's no disrespect for those that organise those events, but so yeah,
Takes
so
away the spirit
it
of
just
it,
takes
doesn't
it
it?
away. Yeah. So yes, it's. I mean, that's another thing that we find that with our reproduction garments. I think that's something else that we can continue that, because we went to a market when we were lucky enough to go to America. And Ellen was looking through this big pile of clothing in a market, and she came across a women's vintage suit, and she was,
Ooh.
she fell
A
in love with it
40s
straight.
suit, wasn't
Yeah,
it? Yeah.
40 suit. She fell in love with it, but she picked it up and it was just literally full of holes. You couldn't even wear it like as a, some people do like to wear it with the moth holes because it's, make, do and mend and things like that. But this was really
But
too
I'm not
far
one
gone.
of those.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And so, but we still bought it. It didn't cost us a lot because of obvious reasons. And then we've bought it back and had it made. We had a sample made of it, and then so that's so now
So
you
we've
can go.
rescued it, haven't
Yeah,
we?
and that's in that anybody can in any size can wear that now. 8 to 22, I think we do. So so that's another reason why everybody can enjoy it, and that'll
Brings us
carry
such
on
joy,
the history.
that, to be honest. It's bringing, there's such works of art, and it would have been worthless, that suit, and we've been able to bring it back to life for all people, different sizes to enjoy.
And that's the thing, like I'm talking about, vintage versus modern a lot in this podcast, but sometimes a nice blend of the two can be, really, really positive because, vintage fashion, authentic vintage fashion does exclude certain
Yeah,
people of certain sizes. And that's what I love about true vintage replicas, that you produce, is that now, someone of a different size to a lady in the 40s, I mean, my nan, I mean, she wasn't an adult in the 40s. She was a child, but her mum, who was an adult in the 40s, she was like a size 6. Like, she was
yeah,
tiny. So, but now somebody can enjoy this dress no matter what their size, which is lovely, because plus size vintage fashion, I've said it before, it's difficult for people. A
yeah.
lot of people have to make, do and mend and alter things because they don't have anywhere to go to be able to experience it. Well, I'm telling you now, listeners, now you do. So go and check out Revival Vintage because, they've got some beautiful, and in fact, tell me some of the ranges that you have on offer before we finish. What should some people just go check out, your like highlights?
Shall I do the women?
Yeah.
So for women, we've got elements of true vintage still in dresses, coats, and suits. We've got accessories, hats, beautiful hats and bags that are true vintage. And then on the reproduction side, we've got replica suits from the 40s. In fact, all the women's replica is from the 1940s, where we've inspired and copied pieces. And then a lovely range of dresses. And more recently, we've introduced, we've got plenty of knitwear. We're in the process of bringing in a new bag style and some hats. I think that's, pretty much it for women.
And men's probably got more, actually, for the men. We've got knitwear. Len was saying about the knitwear. And we've got the Fair Isles, like I've got on now. Some other things that were made in Scotland as well, out to the Scottish wools. Men's jackets and suits. We've got some summer suits coming this year as well. Trousers, waistcoats. We do hats as well. We've even got shoes, a small range of shoes.
Top to toe for the men, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Hopefully ties as well. Vintage
Yeah.
ties is something we really always looking out for. We enjoy looking for them. So everything.
Shirts that are with
of course.
where we
the main
started
thing,
with
the main thing is where
where
it started is the shirts. Yeah, and that's still a bit, our most popular range is the shirts.
kind of our bread and butter product is the shirts.
Well, I love that because another thing that I think is quite unique to your company is that you really do cater for men and masculine dress because a lot of vintage companies, you see a lot of fit and flare dresses and a lot of cute, headscarves and like utility suits, like you said, high-waisted flared trousers. But, sometimes the men might not have quite as many options. But with your ranges, the men have so many options. And you have a lot of bases of how to start a vintage look. So, rather than having to buy a whole outfit, you can buy something that you can accessorize with different things like your shirts, which is great because it gives someone a base to start from if they're just starting out or if they've already got vintage pieces at home, but they've just not got the base. Does that make sense?
Yeah. We've got some good staples.
Yeah, because I mean the men are no different now. We wear things to death, and that's always been the case. So there's never really been that much vintage men's anyway, because they just worn to death.
There's nothing out there. Oh, I get it. So there's nothing out there because they just wore and wore and wore and wore them.
Yeah, fit for the could have been sort of thing. But yeah, hopefully that's not going to happen so much now.
Oh, some things never change, eh?
Yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you so very much for both doing this podcast with me. You've both been a delight. I really thoroughly implore anybody who's listening to this to go and check out Revival Vintage. Just remind me, what socials are you on, please, so that people know where to find you?
Yeah, all the obvious ones really: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Have I missed any?
Yeah,
Twitter.
I think
X.
Is it Revival Vintage UK? I think
Yeah.
Instagram.
Revival Vintage
Yeah.
UK.
So many ways people can get in touch with us as well, on the website and through the socials.
Yeah.
So we're here to listen.
Oh, fantastic. And I think what you're doing is timeless in itself and something that should be celebrated in a world where, you know, sustainable fashion and keeping your favorite pieces for years and years and years isn't quite as popular as it used to be. Like my nan, she's still got dresses that she wore in her youth. That's how long people used to keep stuff. And you are still celebrating that attitude to life, which I think makes us all a lot more grateful, a lot more resourceful, and a lot more conscious of what we are consuming, which I guess was a big theme of this podcast.
Yeah.
So thank you both
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, we've enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, yay, I'm so glad. See, I told you it would be fine. And make sure you go and check out Revival Vintage because they really are worth a look.
Thank you.
Thanks.